Parents were not interested in getting high. Period.
That either. That either. All right. I think we should be going live. I don't know. I always forget if this game. Let's see.
Of course, I play games in the Source engine though.
Oh, of course. Yes. Okay. The audio's working. All right. So, we're starting Lunch Zone. It's our first time doing Lunch Zone in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we are live.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I am David Kutchik. I'm a PhD student here at UW Milwaukee in the English department. I'm the only English person this time around.
That's right.
I'm in Plan H, which is digital media, cinema, and digital studies. Just doing mostly video game work. And I'm joined by two people.
I'm Thomas Malaby, professor of anthropology here at UWM.
And I'm Matthew Carricker. I'm a PhD student in the anthropology department.
Awesome. Matthew, I can't believe you've never played this game. I just can't believe it.
That's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity.
Yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you're going to be joining in the middle.
Oh.
So you're going to miss all of the fun conversations Stuart and I had about scaffolding and that kind of stuff.
Well, give us a lead-in, David, so that we're roughly, at where you're at in terms of what you're excited to show
Sure.
and think about.
Yeah, so when Stuart and I streamed this for Stuart's class on Friday of last week, and we talked about basically a whole bunch of different stuff. But a big thing that I was really interested in here, actually, let me adjust this audio quick. The biggest thing that I was interested in, as somebody who is really interested in education, was how the game teaches you how to play it.
Cool.
So the portal gun I have now, originally, I was only able to... First off, when you start the game, you're only able to enter through portals that, the game itself makes for you. So there'll be times where, like the portal gun is stationary, and then it'll randomly adjust, it'll be on a timer, basically, and then the portal will take you somewhere new. So at the very beginning, it just teaches you that... Oh! Hey, Strongest Coffee, thanks for joining. Basically, at the beginning of the game, it teaches you that, hey, portals operate, on these walls, and you can walk through them. And then you get one aspect of the portal gun where you just get the blue portal. So the orange portal and the blue portal are the two different portals that connect to each other.
In
right?
and out.
Yep, in and out, basically, right? And so, after, the first couple of levels, you only get the blue portal. So the orange portals are still stationary, or they might, adjust or move on a timer, but you have control of the blue portal. Then after a couple levels, you get control of both of them, which is where they really start messing with, jumping through portals and shooting through them, adjusting or carrying over your velocity into different areas and that kind of thing. So then you can get into more complex puzzles because you can kind of shoot both portals wherever you want to. And ooh,
I was going to say, too, in those early levels, David, there's a way in which you're learning what a portal does. You're also learning how to traverse that particular map.
Yeah.
In this way in which you could step through a plane and end up somewhere else, right?
Yes.
So there's a way in which it gets you thinking about the three-dimensional space, especially as regards the kind of skin of planes available in new ways.
Yeah, definitely. And if you the concept of scaffolding in education is basically this idea that you kind of build off of what your students already know. Right? You make things slowly more complicated and complex for your students, but you don't just throw them in, right? You don't give them all of the tools necessary to write an academic paper when they're first grade, right? You have to build off what they already know. You have to give them tools to kind of grow in complexity. And I think Portal does a really good job of this. Portal 2 doesn't necessarily need to do that as much with the portal gun. They do it with other mechanisms, right? But this game in particular, because it's kind of the first time that really jumping through portals in this way, I would say, like, is in a mass-produced, game that can be sold and played to a mass public, right? This is really the first time that this happens. So they need to have a lot of scaffolding in the beginning to teach a player in 2007 how this portal operates in this 3D game world.
That's interesting that you said 2007, because it kind of historicizes a level of what Ryan House is going to be talking about tomorrow, which is ludoliteracy. And the way in which we're all part of this, techno-societal moment of ludoliteracy, which Portal, I mean, I don't live completely under a rock, it is a very large part of. But then, it's also interesting that I've kind of disrupted it, because the game sort of assumes the linear experience so that it can scaffold onto that.
And here you are popping in without that experience. And that's true in a meta way, potentially, right? Which is, if the general computing, at least maybe computer gaming universe, considers something like Portal to be part of the lingua franca of engaging with computers, or at least computer games, you're also messing with that. You're disrupting that, because you're coming to everything you're coming to every day before sitting down here right now without anything like that existing.
Yep. Oops.
To me,
There.
what gets very interesting is thinking, because I'm always thinking about institutions, is the way in which, one could imagine someone writing a really good book, maybe it already exists, about this history of computer game designers, their changing approaches to, and maybe growing awareness of the different available techniques for educating through practice that are available to them, right?
Yeah.
Because certainly there were tutorials, right? And there were instructions back in the day, early computer games. That manual, the printed instruction manual, was a precious object, because if you lost it, right, or something like Bard's Tale or something like that, well, that was all the crucial information about all the different spells and all the other things. So there's maybe a shift, an identifiable shift in certain ways, right? From a rational, technical approach to teaching information, sort of like foreign languages get taught that way, to a more immersive approach.
And bringing up the institutional context as well, just saying about what, the idea of institutions, or at least within institutional ethnography, thinking of institutions as textually mediated social organizations, and then thinking about how, well, where does, this sort of scaffolding heuristic experiences like this, in which you can sort of, you can teach somebody, how does that take the place of more conventional texts as they've circulated in an institutional context before?
Right.
And it reminds me of researching Pokemon Go, because the I can't remember his name. I think it's Hank something.
How did it get you?
It bounced behind me. I forgot that it was behind me.
I was watching and I was like, I think he's good.
Sorry, Matthew, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I just had to stop to observe death.
Yes.
Let us honor the moment.
Yes.
Hank, somebody who's the guy in charge of Niantic Labs that made Pokemon Go. It was interesting looking at his biography, and with the way that he's part of that, what you're seeing, this sort of very specific history of where game design institutions overlap, because originally his satellite mapping technologies, which sort of took satellite images and turned them into an interface that you could explore, eventually became Google Maps and Google Earth. But before, when the dot-com bubble burst, his technology had no institutional sponsorship, as it were, and he made money during the Iraq invasion, loaning this technology to big news corporations so that they could bring you street by street maps of places like Fallujah
Oh wow. Okay. Right.
in order to create a new kind of real-time subjectivity for people to sort of like watch the war on terror.
Right.
And then when he went to Google, he became interested in this sort of connection between ludic ways of using mapping technology and maps themselves, and played around with all these sorts of things within, I think it's called Google Game Labs, before sort of breaking out on his own, when Google became Alphabet, they left and became Niantic. And I think Niantic is the name of a famous ship in San Francisco from the past. But anyway, to make a long story short, I see all of these connections in that context.
Right.
In the way that Pokemon Go was building on ways of, tacitly scaffolding users into participating in these complex, institutionally sponsored processes of, catching Pokemon at the end of the day. But
It's interesting to think about those kinds of personal histories and how a person moving through and between institutions tells a particular kind of story about where we end up with games and technologies. A similar story attends to Philip Rosedale, who was the founder of Linden Lab, makers of Second Life, where he had developed the streaming technology that Real Media Player used. He was the guy who did that, right? So for him, everything was about, wow, I know how to think about and innovate around streaming gigantic amounts of information to desktops when that was a difficult thing to do, right? So deploying that toward a shared experience, sort of like deploying that toward the shared experience of Pokemon Go, is the move that he made as well.
Right, yeah, exactly. And yeah, like you're saying, these individual histories. I mean, who's the guy, I can't remember, Gabe Newell? That's is that the Steam guy?
Yep.
So he went from Valve and Portal and Half-Life to now he's in charge of this massive platform, But these individuals, they show, in a way, they undermine the kind of stories that institutions like to tell about themselves in paying attention to how they move between these institutions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think of them as revolving door practices where we're not talking about individuals but groups or types of people, who move between like executives.
Right. And the individuality, the role of the individual story is lost.
That's right.
Is this a relatively late level?
Yeah, this is, I think, 17 of 19.
Okay, I know I've played all of them. But that was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But I'm realizing the techniques that are required of you here there's a bunch of complex three-dimensional thinking, obviously, that you have to do with this kind of warping potential, along with timing questions, right? And the things it's kind of interesting to see it again. It's kind of nostalgic for me.
It's great to come in at a late level, you're right, and see all of the moving parts that have clearly been introduced in an accretive manner.
Right, David, can you talk a bit more about, what are some of the things that you noticed
You did it.
with a level
The
like
weighted
this?
companion cube certainly brought you good luck. However, it cannot accompany you for the rest of the test and, unfortunately, must be
I'll wait till this
euthanized.
is done.
Please escort your companion cube to the Aperture Science Emergency Intelligence Incinerator.
Right, so this, we're going to throw that in there.
You euthanized
There we go.
your faithful companion cube more quickly than any test subject on record. Congratulations.
So this level requires me to understand a couple of things that they've introduced throughout, right? So I need to know how portals work. I need to know that the light balls that get shot out both kill me, so I can't touch them, right? And they activate certain switches. I need to know that platforms can be raised or lowered. I need to know that my momentum, both of myself and other objects, including the light bulbs, are maintained as they go through portals. Right, I need to know how the button system works. That obviously is a little more straightforward and the kind of thing people would have experienced in games previously, right? But I need to know how all of those things combine in like one puzzle to even activate one of the three platforms that needed to be raised for me to get to the next part of the level, right? So I need to know all of these elements of the game And the only reason I know how to do that, right, is because it's shown to me progressively throughout the first 16 levels that these are what these things do, right? So, for example, the light ball that gets shot out doesn't appear until after I get the portal gun, because the whole point of the first 5 or 6 levels is to just learn what the portal gun does. Then we can add the light balls to it, right? That act as activating switches for certain platforms or certain doors. So it's really kind of like the adding on to, right, of all of these different challenges and all these different ways of engaging with the environment to do it. And I think what's interesting is that, right,
The experiment is nearing its conclusion. The
I was gonna
Enrichment Center is required to remind you that you will be baked, and then there will be cake.
and then there will be cake. You will be baked, and then there will be cake. You will be baked a cake. Another thing that's interesting is the voice of GLaDOS. That is really something that adds another layer to this, because I think... Here we go.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I think with this puzzle game, the narrator who helps get you through the levels, I'm sure things have been tinkered with it before this, right? Like the unreliable voice that's guiding you through this world or whatever. But I think it's interesting that you have the game itself teaching you non-verbally how all these things work, right? It's mostly through symbols. So for example, we'll go in there in a second. But over here, right, on the side of the wall here, they have all of these symbols where it says, like, it basically shows me a universal icon of a human being, and shows them being affected by the things in the level. So, like, it shows the light balls and the portal gun and all that stuff.
Kind of, yeah, it's sort of iconographically, it's giving you an overview of the categories of things that are going to be relevant
Yeah.
In what's coming.
I was gonna say is then we have the voice, right? The voice of GLaDOS, who is supposed to be our guide, right? She's the one who's like administering this test to us, and you would kind of assume that the voice of the person who is administering the test to you would be there to help guide you through the level, right? That's the assumption, and I think that points to something that Stuart and I talked about, which was institutions, right?
Yeah.
Specifically education, but of course other institutions at this time too, where the guiding voices, right? The people in charge who are supposed to be the helpers in this institution are really the things that are actually kind of getting in the way, right? That have the power over you and are just testing you to see if you're aptitude enough to like engage with the institution, and then at the end, plot twist, they're there to dismiss you, right? And to get rid of you and to test another human being.
So the line becomes a circle.
Yeah, basically, right? And things end up a little different than usual because of the game world and what's happening in it, right? But the reason that this test is set up is basically to test this portal gun and to use these humans as guinea pigs, which I think can be linked to a lot of institutional stuff.
I think this is connecting to a really important and underdeveloped, underexplored question in the study of games, right? So, what is a puzzle versus a game? Right, and you just a little bit ago referred to this as a puzzle game, and I would agree with you on that, right? So, puzzles. One way of thinking about it that I've been toying with is that a crossword puzzle. Sometimes it's hard for me to think of that as a game because there's a set solution, right? And the game of it is can I put things together in the
The
right way, sort of like a
experiment is
jigsaw
nearing
puzzle,
its
right?
conclusion.
But
The Enrichment Center
this is a
is
great
required
example of
to
a game.
remind you that you will be baked,
Yeah.
and then there will be cake.
A great example of a game that is clearly there's a puzzle quality to it, and the puzzle quality is there is one solution, right? There might be others, but there's probably just one solution. But this illustrates it, right? There may be a solution, but there's execution
The experiment
questions,
is
right?
nearing its
Contingencies, right?
conclusion.
So
The Enrichment
there's
Center
still what
is
we call
required to
performative
remind
contingency,
you
right?
that you will
Whether
be
you
baked,
will
and then there will be cake.
execute the action you want to correctly, right? And there's still kind of stochastic processes going on here. Maybe it's the little guardian shooting around or other kind of things that have a random component to them. But at the end of the day, and this is where it gets back to education, the designer the designer, truly the designer, or however they're imagined in the world or mapped onto GLaDOS or not, the designer has a solution that they have in mind, and you're playing this kind of social contingency game to figure out what that solution they have architected is, right? You're trying to put yourself in the designer's shoes, just like you're trying to understand what a crossword puzzle designer has, what's the right solution? What do they have sitting in front of them as the completed crossword puzzle, right? Mm-hmm. The reason I think that's interesting for education is, just like you said, there's this way in which in educational relationships, there's two things going on at once. On the one hand, there's the kind of content that the teacher may have in their head. And it might be the case, not always, that their measure of success is, do you have the content they have in their head, right?
Yep.
So, can you solve this puzzle the way I know this puzzle can be solved? But the irony, of course, is that along the way, you're gaining these other skills, right? You gain the skill of how to use a portal gun, how to think in portals, right? And how to do all these other things, right? So there is a tension between the content, you making the right guesses about the correct solution to puzzles, and the growing potentiality that you have, right, for being able to use these tools to manipulate the environment in other ways. Is that all? As we're getting shot up here.
Yes.
Contingent.
No, I
cannons.
think that's a good commentary. Talking about crosswords, then I wonder about your ideas about Wordle, which a massive institution, the New York Times, is now sponsored, and of course the New York Times crossword, much like the Times crossword in the UK, is sort of like the cryptic crossword is like the challenge. What does it mean now that an institution like the New York Times, I think, is sponsoring Wordle, and how does the shift from the kind of game, the puzzle, the crossword is, to the more kind of the different sort of way in which a Wordle sort of captivates and compels users?
Yes.
You know, that's a significant shift.
It is. Well, there's several things I'd say just off the top of my head that are to me potentially, good things to explore about that. Right. One is the crossword puzzle is almost like a very old school cultural literacy kind of test, right? Do you know who starred in Macbeth at the London premiere in 1956? I'm guessing Laurence Olivier, but there's cultural literacy in a very obvious way, literally written into how crossword puzzles as a form work, right? So I think there's a lot of reasons why that's a problematic way to proceed if you're looking to grow your audience today,
Sure.
right? In addition, of course, the leisure time required, the imagined practice of the time and the pencil, and Bill Clinton does his New York Times crossword puzzle in pen, all these kind of stories. All of that is part and parcel of the same, Bourdieuian distinction that's possible and is expressed through the crossword puzzle as a form, right? Whereas, but the crossword puzzle as a daily activity, right, that everybody who subscribes to the New York Times before the digital era is looking at in that Benedict Anderson kind of way of print capitalism. They're looking at the same piece of paper and they know thousands of other people are looking at it, and they're sharing that experience of doing the crossword puzzle. And even if they never strike up a conversation with anyone that day who did the crossword puzzle that day, they know they could, and they feel they're part of this imagined community. Wordle is still trying to play that game,
Yeah.
right? Where everyone did the puzzle for that day, and it becomes there's an imagined community that could fuel any potential interaction from it. But Wordle, even though it still has certainly elements of kind of cultural knowledge of the English language in it, and even as well that kind of social contingency of, from playing it, I start to notice, I see, they're selecting words with a particular eye toward being challenging, right? Like a word like vivid was up like last week or something.
Right, yeah.
That's a word that's going
When
You know, if you
'cause
cast a wide net, that's going to be a problem to discover, right? Because of the repetition of the letters and
yeah, the repetition.
Right.
Totally.
and the unusual V, etc. So I guess all of that is to say that Wordle, you know, solves a lot of problems that crossword puzzles presented in terms of exclusivity and distinction, but it doesn't get rid of them entirely. But it provides, as a shorter, easier to play, digitally mediated game you can play on any device. It provides that shared experience of that for that imagined community that crossword puzzles did. So it's, of course they would buy it.
Yeah. One thing about the Wordle that I find interesting is the when people say, "Oh, I got the Wordle in one go," or "I got the Wordle in two goes," and this way in which sharing your color combinations and things, because it doesn't reflect on what you would think maybe at first glance, which is that, oh, they're really clever and they're really good at solving puzzles, because the element of luck is so massive in the sort of to the point where I don't really understand the sharing the Wordle outcome. I don't really understand what that means as a text. I don't really know what that's supposed to say to me.
Well, like we were saying before, right? It's not going to traffic in a clear regime of value, you know, Bourdieuian kind of distinction regime, the way that crossword puzzles did. It doesn't seem to be as easy to sort of connect. Wait, you know, they got this in this many tries. What does that mean? Versus they knew the original name of the capital of, you know, the Czech Republic or something like that.
But you know what's interesting is the way in which those little things that people share, and my family WhatsApp group, you know, is just us sharing these every day now, you know, is the way that each one becomes, you can read it in a way. You can map that onto your own experience and see how, with the combination of grey, amber, and green squares, you can sort of put yourself in the position of them and see how they sort
That's
of
an
played
interesting
out.
thought, right? Yeah, because a crossword puzzle doesn't really allow for that, right? You can, it doesn't allow, even if we imagine it was a thing in an era of more social media sharing. You know, what exactly, in looking at the completed crossword puzzle, you wouldn't see much information at all
So doesn't
about
these-
how they got from point A to point B.
Doesn't Dieser talk about the formalization of chess games in newspapers? Because I
Yes.
see that the Wordle
Yes.
thing output is much
Right.
more like that.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah, see, there's a paper there.
Yeah.
You research out and you write a paper about Wordle and crossword puzzles and chess, all in newspapers.
I
It's
think
at least a blog post, you know.
Yeah,
Right,
I
yeah.
think the point is interesting because, right, in terms of time and space, right? If everybody completes the crossword, we all kind of assume that it took them a certain amount of time, right? So say they were like, oh yeah, I put a timer on and it took me 30 minutes to do it, right, or whatever, and that's something that the web page version and the app version have. They automatically have timers.
Right.
What's interesting about the Wordle then is that it not only you could say like, oh, I solved it in however many minutes, but by saying I solved it in so many guesses, kind of, I think like does I don't know exactly how I would categorize it, but it does like an interesting way in which time is kind of shifted and the understanding of how people complete the crossword puzzle or versus the Wordle.
I'm surprised there was
Right.
no temporal constraint on Wordle. I always assumed it was like 15 minutes or something. But
Well, I think all that matters is that there is a timer. In
Yeah.
other words, you know, an indefinite timer, but where you could kind of triangulate if you share from Wordle how many guesses and how much time, and triangulate between them, and some emergent, given what the word is, right? Because that's another factor that would change, you know, how you might assess someone's, you know, acumen based for that word and that, you know, that only that many guesses in that period of time, you know, kind of thing is, wow, that's amazing. Whereas, oh, that word, well, okay, sure, you know, that would only take you 3 guesses. You know,
There
why
was
did it take you 12 minutes? You know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
in both crosswords and Wordle, there is a ritual.
Ooh, this is fun. You'll like this.
There is a ritualistic rite of passage element.
Oh, this
in-
is great. This is great. This is great. Watch this.
Wait,
sort
and then
of-
you have to.
Yeah, you have to make your way through all
Oh
of
gosh,
this
I
from
forgot.
portal
Where do
to
I go?
portal.
Okay, there.
There's this great paper on ritual in the classroom by Michael Hausman, and he taught anthropology at university in France, and the paper is a practical experiment for thinking about ritual, and it's an inductive ritual for males. It's called Le Rouge et Le Noir.
That may be dangerous under certain conditions.
And in
For more
French,
information, please attend
E
an
is
enrichment center
is homologous
electrical
with, so
safety
is and are
seminar.
both are homo. They sound the
sound
same,
yeah,
but they spell
homonyms.
different homonyms.
Or homophones.
Yeah, and so, what it is Le Rouge et Le Noir, everybody thinks they're red and the black, but then he basically has certain people come in and they look at a piece of paper and it says Le Rouge is Le Noir. And then at the end, everybody stands up and he goes, repeat after me, Le Rouge et Le Noir, and everybody goes, Le Rouge et Le Noir. But of course, at that point, it's all the males know the truth, and all of the girls are saying the other one, right? And so there's an interesting thing about the Wordle in that regard, where only upon being completed the Wordle do you know what the things mean, because you can see what the green letters are and understand how other people have gone about completing it, you know?
Decode it.
And so there's a
Yeah.
sort of distinction through participation
Right.
in a kind of ritualistic kind of
And,
way.
and you know, I'm sure when people share their Wordle grid, one of the first things people look at, and I really haven't done any of this because I'm not really on social media, but is to look at, well, what's the person's opening word?
Mm.
You know, there's lore around that, I'm sure, to an extreme degree.
I steal Lucy's, which is a Jew.
Oh, nice, yeah, that's a good one. I like avoid, actually.
Mm-hmm. The problem with the Jew is that there's this weird thing where when there's this weird
Oh
thing
gosh.
that happens.
Oh no.
If
I
you
forgot.
knock out too many vowels, you can put yourself in a bad, because there's, you know,
Yes, right. Too many vowels can be a problem for sure.
if you don't know where to go next.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, actually, avoid, and then what was the next one I was thinking of? Was it like quiet or something like that?
Oh, cool.
And then between the two of those, even though they both have I, you also get some good, consonants in there as well.
So then, of course, there's the purposeful reuse of letters you don't know that fit.
Yes.
Because you're
Yeah.
putting in words that have other letters you want to check.
Exactly. And the other thing too is I've discovered that if I
Ensure the safe performance of all authorized
wow.
activities. Do not destroy vital
There you are.
testing apparatus.
I didn't need to do that. That just happened. I didn't even try to do that.
wow, that was dramatic. That was quick thinking on your part. I can't remember what I was going to say now. Well, I really like you using this to talk about these issues, David. I think this is a pretty cool use.
Whoop.
Whoa, nice.
Oh, so there's my cake.
There's your cake.
Congratulations. The test is
But I'm actually
all Adventure technologies remain safely operational up to 4,000.
I also-
so of course the twist is, which as we know is not a twist for us,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is that
You're to be baked.
we're to be killed
Yeah,
afterwards.
baked.
So it's like Moon with Sam Rockwell.
Reminds me too, by the way, you were talking about the kind of unreliability of the educator or the designer or the test provider, right? Was the way in which you had that glimpse of the behind-the-scenes rusted railing area, right?
Yep.
You couldn't go into it. That's another nice way of illustrating.
Wait, so this, is
that,
this,
that was the rewind there, which is going to run another program.
Yep.
Right, where they preserve some semblance of reliability. You know. After saying we were going to murder,
Just
we're
kidding.
Very happy you did this.
There.
wow.
Yeah.
So now, what's
Wait,
really
so
interesting about this,
This
right?
is still
This
part
is
of the game, but it's not
backstage.
part of the puzzle.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are puzzles, but now they're implicit puzzles.
Right.
Yep.
yes.
Rather. Yep. Right. So, and this is what a lot of Portal 2 is actually.
Yeah.
Is more of this kind of implicit puzzle creation and or navigation.
And think what the semiotic impact of that's a regular door. These are rusted railing. All these things are just so well handled by Valve because, look, I got to operate a door.
I had to open a door.
Like, talk about portals, right? And now you get to operate a door, and that is liberating to actually operate a regular door, That's crazy.
But it's also weird because, as I've never opened a door before, right? It's been 19 levels and I haven't used the E button to interact with an actual door.
Right at the beginning when you wake up, is there a little bit of that? Is there a little bit
No,
of... No? Okay.
there's a portal.
I'm thinking of Portal 2, I think.
Yeah. So, for me, I didn't know what to do at first.
It's interesting you say that because Diego sent me a link to speedrunners of this, and of course that's got nothing to do with the game.
Yeah.
But programmers who made Portal watch people speedrun, and one of the aspects is the use of the elevator. And one of the programmers says something interesting. He says that why did we spend all that time actually making the elevator move through virtual space when we could have just teleported the player? It took so much time and energy. And so it's interesting to think of that in terms of, between portals and doors here.
Yeah, I hope somebody's already written something great about speedrunning. I'll have to look, where I was trying to think about what really is the if playfulness is a readiness to improvise, what is the word that denotes, an opposed attitude? And I often think of something like regimented, right? But efficient is another potential one of that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's something that's regulated for a purpose with respect to some external metric as opposed to allowing for and legitimizing improvisation and messing about, and speedrunners in their own way are, they're playful on the way to doing it, and there certainly is execution questions in any given run, which always have a kind of playful element, I think. But there's also an anti-playfulness to it. Right?
Yeah, because everything collapses around the need to have the smallest time possible.
Yes, right. That external metric.
That's
right?
the external metric.
The thing that it takes us away from the activity as an end in itself, and starts to institutionalize it, with reference to some other aim.
In a way that multiple games can be compared then through that external metric.
Yes, exactly. Institutionalization, sports versus games, maybe even games themselves versus free play. The cake is a lie.
The cake is a lie, classic meme.
The cake is a lie.
So somebody else
This is a huge part of internet culture at the time too.
Yes. In early meme culture, it circulated very heavily. It was
Yes.
a major component. High value meme.
Oop.
Oh.
It's interesting as well because the image of the cake slice implies a wider cake, a circular thing of which only was sliced in the same way that this character is just a slice in terms of an implied eternal process by which new subjects are created, tested, and destroyed.
Right.
But I don't know.
So, and what's funny here?
Too much semiotic mapping.
So this is-
Sometimes it can get to be too much. You never know. It's worth it to try.
What's
Okay, go
interesting
ahead.
is this is one of the first puzzles in the game. I think like puzzle 5 or 6.
Right.
This is before you get both portal gun. The option to shoot both portals. So this was originally a puzzle that I couldn't do without one of these spheres that would come through this tube. But now that I have my own
You
portal
are
gun,
the sphere.
right? I can do these puzzles in different ways, which allows me then to kind of break the mold of the typical progression that the institution has designed me to do, right?
Which gets right back to what we were saying before. You've been given tools that you are now a contingent actor in the sense that you aren't reducible to the content they would predict you could enact, right? You can do other things by applying laterally, by applying something you learned from a different context into an original context.
Yeah.
So that from the perspective of the institution, this is a kind of Jesse Owens move.
Yes, right. Or Dr. Maybe even more than Jesse Owens, Julius Erving and Oscar Robertson, right? Playing the game in a new way.
Oh, right. Who are they?
So they played basketball. They took basketball above the rim. They started
Oh,
with
I
dunking and
see.
everything else in the 70s,
Yes.
right? Whereas Jesse Owens, he didn't do the track and field as far as I know in a new way. The sort of the way in high jumping. There was the Fosbury flop,
Okay.
which was a UK high jumper, I believe, who innovated jumping over the high bar by throwing his body over. Nobody had done that before, right? So that's like what Dr. J and the Big O, Oscar Robertson, did in the NBA.
Oh, I forget that.
Or there were 2 professional basketball leagues at the time, but in those leagues.
Mhm.
So that's, I think, what applies here. Kind of
Right.
applying these other tools in ways that the designers, at least nominally here, didn't intend. But what the game has done now, David, is they've separated the person you're trying to make social contingency guesses about, right, from GLaDOS game designer. Now GLaDOS and the game designer are clearly two different entities,
Yes.
right? Because GLaDOS clearly is not, in charge of what you're doing here, but the game designers must be,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Although it's still always possible that you could find some glitch, right? You could find something the game designers didn't want you to be able to do, an exploit.
Yep.
A little higher on the line.
Yeah. Yes.
There
Up.
you go. Oh,
Maybe
what's going on?
if I do this lower.
Lower, yeah. So you're dropping down.
Yep. There we go.
There we go. Uh-oh. I was thinking maybe the game designers had written something else.
Yeah. Where do you think you're going? It's interesting because that loading screen is the only one that appears when you're not in the elevator, right? Which suggests another backdoor-ness kind of, right? Where the usual pattern is kind of broken in a different way.
Yeah, yeah. Again, speaking to a relationship between you and the game designers, not between you and this test system.
Yes. Right. So what we're gonna do? Not get crushed by this.
So, David, is this, to add another constraint, is this game completable within the rest of the time that we have left?
We no, because I have to teach.
Right, we're going to have to wrap it up. But I think that the discussion has been really, really fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, look at that. You're standing on the little I-beam.
Yeah.
Good job.
There we go.
Skillfully
Sneak
done.
through there.
See, we have only the best gamers in this series play.
I think Ren points out that the game has some challenge levels in them, or they added some challenge levels. I wonder. I've never played through the challenge levels for this game, so I wonder how crazy those would get.
Maybe we should do that next week.
Sure, I'd be totally down. I just want to get through this door. That's my goal. Okay.
Do it. We believe in you.
How do I do
Speedrunning now.
this? Yeah. That goes all the way up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you'd be
That one
squished.
does.
Yeah, you can do it there. Wait, yeah, wait. There you go.
Yeah, how do I get over there though?
Is there... No, there's no ceiling above it or anything.
No.
No. Oh, can you fall from the opposite wall? Right? In other words, fall from there to...
No, because then
Not lined
the
up.
gravity will just take me down.
Oh, right.
Well, I had to get up here for some reason. Oh gosh, Ren, if you're watching, help. We need assistance. Does that get me to do something? I was wondering if this would get me like a specific angle I could then go over there or something.
So, how high do they all go
Or
up?
maybe no, I can't do that. Because I'm
Because
thinking.
you want to jump down, so from the side you.
Yeah, but
accelerate,
that
right?
can't. But I don't think I can do that. There aren't any floors here that allow me to do that. So the one in the
That
one in the
yeah,
middle, right? Those three don't go all the way up, but these two at the very end do. But I don't think I can. Yeah,
And
there's nothing I can
there's
jump
nothing
through.
on the floor of the space that can be
That I can
that
jump
tall
through.
space that you can map onto.
I don't think so.
No.
Well, I think we're gonna have to call it.
Yeah.
Because I got to get teaching, unfortunately. But
Well, that'll be the cliffhanger.
yeah, that'll be the cliffhanger. We'll finish this up. We'll do some of the challenges next week.
That sounds
Or-
like fun.
I guess it was that easy.
Or are you gonna be able to do it?
I made it more complicated than I needed it to be.
Oh, I see.
Apparently.
what you did. Right. Overthinking it.
Yes, yeah, and that happened actually with a couple of the first levels, where because I knew what it would be like to have 2 portal guns, I thought it would be more complicated than it was.
You know, whenever we say the word puzzle, I think about this kind of game theory, social contingency game between the designer and you, right? They
Yep.
know you're going to overthink it,
Yep.
right? They're making design choices based on their guesses about you, just like your guesses about you.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Ren and other viewers, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.